Joining us right now, Americans for Tax Reform President Grover Norquist is here. Grover, on Sunday Morning Futures this week, you told me that by, delaying health care, tax reform could be permanently damaged. How can Republicans get over this hurdle, you think?
Well, step one is to hurry up and get health care done. The people who decided they didn't want to vote for it because it wasn't perfect have not only damaged the prospects of getting a good bill on health care, they're now threatening tax reform. So the business community has a very real interest in going and saying to the congressmen and senators, hurry up and get health care done, then we can do tax reform. This can all happen this year, but not if you have 25 guys sitting on the corner going, we're not willing to help.
Yeah, but why should we believe that it's going to get done when we saw the fight over health care? I mean, we've just been talking about all of these extra things that we didn't hear in the campaign, a border adjustment tax. Paul Ryan's plan, we know, is higher than President Trump's plan when it comes to the corporate tax rate. And then there's all those deductions. People do not want to see the elimination of the property deduction, an elimination of the state income tax deduction. Are they going to have a major fight? And does that mean we're just going to see tax cuts, not tax reform in 17?
No, I think you will see tax reform. As you guys were talking earlier, what has to happen to make the tax cuts permanent, and we're not just talking about tax reform. This is tax reform plus tax reduction. This is not revenue neutral in any sense. It is deficit neutral. That's why the health care part of it is $1 trillion in lower taxes every decade and more than $1 trillion in less spending. And then we go out on health care. Because they have a dynamic scoring situation, they can actually cut taxes about $1 trillion more and still be deficit neutral. We also dropped the baseline for how much revenue is expected when Paul Ryan very wisely made all the extenders permanent last year. That gives us another $600 billion in the decade for cuts. This is a dramatic reduction in taxes, not just reform. And that's why some of the issues you just brought up, that if they were standalone, you'd say, oh, there might be political opposition. But when you take the corporate rate to 20%, the business tax to 25% for people who pay through pass-throughs or subchapter S corporations, when you go to full business expensing, when you get rid of the death tax and the alternative minimum tax, some of the other issues that you brought up fade in importance because it's such a large tax cut for Americans.
Grover, what kind of growth do you think we get out of the kind of tax cuts that you're talking about? Doesn't the whole plan really hang on what kind of growth estimates you come out with and how realistic those growth estimates are?
But what they do when the CBO scores it for purposes of dynamic scoring, they act as if there was only going to be 0.5% economic growth. They say we're going to get $1 trillion over a decade. If the economy grows at 3% a year, instead of the 2% a year that we did under Obama, it raises $2.5 trillion more in a decade.
What makes you think we can get to 3% growth when we haven't had that for more than a decade, when the population is aging, when productivity is very slow? There are a lot of headwinds to getting faster growth right now.
Okay. Those were Obama's excuses.
And it's completely different policies.
And exactly, Mary. This is Ronald Reagan policies. Reagan gave us 4% growth. Reagan gave us better than 4% growth with a less robust tax cut than Trump has. He has both full expensing, which is a real driver for economic growth. Instead of long depreciation schedules, you expense business investments year one, and the corporate rate from 35 to 20, and for businesses, smaller businesses, subchapter S, down to 25. This is 4% growth almost immediately.
Yeah, wait,
Jagan,
how do you see it? Jagan, how do you see it?
Grover, what do you make, though, of the Democrats digging their heels in, saying we're not touching tax reform, which would be good for the American people, American businesses, unless we see Donald Trump's tax returns?
Well, you could have ended that sentence halfway through. We're not going to help on tax reform, period. The excuse may change, but no one has ever believed that any single Democrat, there isn't a Democrat who doesn't vote for higher taxes in that Senate, nor in the House. The days of bipartisanship on tax reform are over. The entire Obama health care and tax policies were passed with only Democratic votes. They will be dismantled with only Republican votes. So anybody who's planning on getting Democratic votes is wasting their time. There are enough Republicans to make tax reform work and health care work. as long as they play as a team. And that's the challenge. Some of them think that they're not on a relay race. They think they're independent players.
They get a lot of factions going on.
I want to come back to one point. You said this could be a replay of Reagan. The big difference between Reagan and Trump right now is Reagan presided over a period of falling interest rates. We had double-digit interest rates, double-digit inflation. They came down, and that created this outburst of growth. We now have interest rates near zero, and they're rising. Doesn't that create a different backdrop for Trump than it did for Reagan to work under?
Well, I think it makes Trump's job easier. Ronald Reagan had to tackle both bringing inflation down for double digits and interest rates down from 20% in some cases, which cratered the economy at first. And then when you had the growth started on January 1st when the tax cuts kicked in, and then you had strong growth. When you got the final part of that 25% tax cut, we're going to have the tax cuts take effect immediately upon passage this year.
I doubt it. I don't think it's going to be retroactive to early 17, though, Grover. You're not still sticking with that, are you?
I think the rates will be. The rates will be good for the year. When I talk to the guys,
I'm highly skeptical. I think this takes effect in 18. Pete, what do you think?
No, Grover, in order for this to happen, Capitol Hill has to actually do something. Who's the key player, especially on the Republican side, to push something like this through?
Well, on the House side, you've got Brady, who's put this through on Ways and Means. Remember, Ways and Means and Paul Ryan have been working with the Trump campaign, never mind the Trump presidency, to take the House package and the Trump package and merge them. That's how we went from 25% corporate rate under the Republican House plan, 15% Trump. They moved to 20. Trump accepted full business expensing, which wasn't originally there.
You think if they get tax reform done by November, let's call it, I mean, we know August has been blown off. Let's say they get this done October, November. You think they're going to say that this is retroactive to January 17?
For rate reduction, when you cut rates, you get your income tax rates are good for the year. Now,
all right, we'll be watching.
Some of the investment ones, I think they should make the announcement now that it'll take effect now.
Right.
I think that alone would be very helpful for markets and for growth.
Yeah. Well, we agree with that. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think
it's
happening
louder
now, and I don't think it's happening in 17. But Grover, this is the story, obviously, to watch, and we are doing just that. Grover, thank you so much for weighing in.
Happy Tax Day.
Happy Tax Day, Grover Norquist.